Welcome to another episode of Design on Purpose, the WordPlay Studio podcast. Here we are again, episode 6 or 5. I think it might be 6. We're getting there either way. And it feels like we're just getting started, doesn't it? But it's and it feels like a blink since last week we recorded one. And here we are again. And it's quite late on a Monday night because we've been under the pump a bit lately with work, which has been good. And it's kind of funny just thinking about just been reflecting on our self-love episode and thinking about all the things we said there and trying to make sure they're front of mind whilst going through, when things are getting busy like they are now. But today we wanted to explore a topic around, I guess it's around perfectionism and what that means. And what drives perfectionism and
is it about perfectionism, or is it about not letting perfect get in the way of progress?
That's definitely what it's about. Yes, well, that's it. So maybe that's a good place to start. Do you want to explain a little bit about perfect getting in the way of progress?
Yeah, I think, for us, especially as designers, as creatives, I think perfection can really kind of block you in a way. I think a lot of designers or creatives feel like hesitant to release something until it is perfect, and that can really hold you back. And I think what we've learnt over time and in our learning this MG Taylor methodology is that's one of the axioms that we use is don't let perfect get in the way of progress, because what we've learned is that it's better to get stuff out, get feedback early and often, and just iterate until something gets better. And if you wait till something's really, really perfect, you might miss the opportunity to make it even better than it would have been if you released it when you perceived it to be perfect. And you probably wouldn't even release it at all because it was never going to be perfect in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something I can speak from experience. Is over the year, when you're learning something or you're, I guess, wanting to put yourself out there with something, there is this tendency to sort of not put yourself out, like there's a little bit of fear, I guess, that can come with that, and I guess perfectionism can almost be I've had it described to me as another form of fear in a way. And I know that there's also perfectionism in the sense that, like you're saying, it's like getting feedback earlier so you can iterate and make something better, but also it's like, I guess that's also letting go of I guess this sort of mental picture of how something should be, the standard of something, and opening the doors and allowing more to be possible with it.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's kind of this idea of like an MVP as well, isn't it? It's like, would you really wait until a product or something that you were working on in terms of a business had all the bells and whistles and everything that you envisioned, and you were going to wait until you had it all nutted out before you release it to the world? Or do you kind of get the most simple version of what you can achieve at that time to get a little bit of feedback so that you can start riffing off that?
Oh, totally. Because you see a lot of the time, you can invest so much time, money, resources, also, a lot of emotional, investment into a project, whether you're, an entrepreneur, an artist, a business owner, whoever, or even an athlete or somebody, I'd imagine too. It's like not, waiting for all the perfect conditions to magically align for you to then step out and execute this, this plan that you've got.
Yeah.
When really that's not how the world works.
No. Like if you look at a really good musician, for example, our friend like Lewis is amazing musician, but was he always an amazing musician? Or did he invest many, many, many hours of time consistently over a long period of time with dedication, and over time became this amazing musician? When you see him play, it's it kind of blows your mind. But it would be so interesting to see how he started. What was his first, week of music like? And it's the same with anything. It's like with this podcast too. It's like, we've held back on the podcast for such a long time, and it's been something that I think there's been fear there, and there's been a little bit of hesitation because we didn't really want to put ourselves out there too much. But and then we do have a pretty good, like, we did invest a bit in setting it up, so it was nice visually when we wanted to do the podcast.
But this isn't also our first podcast. Like, it's now we're at the stage where we are going, okay, we're actually committing to this being a real thing for us. Hence why we're here 10 o'clock on a Monday night, making sure we've got an episode done this week. But, in the past we've done audio podcasts before that were quite lo-fi. We've, experimented with videos, but there definitely has been this element of holding back in a way, like, because we look back and go, oh shit, like, Instagram or this or that. It's like all these things that, and I guess we touched on this in previous episodes of like always putting clients first, always putting other people first rather than putting yourself, because it's kind of like a muscle too. And I feel like with this stuff, if you're not flexing it or training that muscle regularly, like podcasting weekly or something like that, like I already feel like we're getting more comfortable doing this, and we've got, we're starting this journey of learning something, and that's exactly what it is. This, like you're saying with music or an MVP or something, it's like you're putting yourself in the position of learning, but you're also having to be a bit vulnerable in the process, because that's how you're getting yourself out there. You're kind of putting yourself in the spotlight going, oh shit, well, we've got two lights here. They're not really spotlights, but and not many people are watching the podcast yet, but and that's kind of the irony of it too. You're like, oh, I don't want to put myself out there, and you put yourself out there, but you don't have an audience yet anyway. So it's like, it's kind of like a bit of
Oh, your mum watches the podcast.
Oh yes, shout outs to my mum, number one fan.
Mommy Queen.
First follower on the Instagram and YouTube. But yeah, it's exactly that. It's like learning to flex that muscle regularly, so it becomes more normal when you're being uncomfortable or vulnerable, like in a situation like this, or in it's the more of the situations that make you vulnerable is the more growth you're going to get. And it's like, if you can continually put yourself and actually put that into some sort of rhythm in your week that you're regularly doing, like a gym routine or like learning jiu-jitsu or whatever, you're going to start to see results and build something.
It definitely does feel a lot easier. I still don't enjoy, like, getting ready to do the podcast. It still makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. But yeah, we're just kind of like diving in there, aren't we? We're committed to it, and it's something that we're doing every week, and we're not trying to make it perfect. Just yet we're just kind of flowing. There's topics that we talk about all the time that we're not really investing too much in planning for each episode, are we? We're kind of just rolling with it. And it's going to be interesting to see how it grows. And, I'm keen to get some people in as well. Oh,
yeah. Well, that's part of it too, isn't it? Sorry. Even this space that we're in right now, we've just slowly tweaked it to suit the needs as we progress on this journey. And we're looking at kind of opening it up in a way, and so we can have a different format for when we invite people. But yeah, it's been like there's no real reason to, I guess to like wait for the ideal, like what is the ideal time for this? It's like now there's only ever now all the time, but it's it's really like a mental game and I guess a feeling of knowing like this is it, like I've got to actually do this, because you can kind of make excuses for so long, for years and years, and I don't have the right camera, or I don't know what I'm talking about. But like everyone's got so much stuff to talk about. We're always talking and thinking and having life experiences that you can talk about and share.
What about that axiom, don't let perfect get in the way of progress, in terms of like a design process or like a design shop or something like that? Because we do talk about that.
That's an axiom that when I first heard it, I think it just like it was hitting the nail on the head for me. I was like, oh my gosh, don't let perfect get in the way of progress. It's such a great, because when you're really into something and you're doing deep work on something, it is kind of easy to go a little bit tunnel vision on some things. Well, I find it anyway. Like when you get really into a task or into a mode of research or something. But then when somebody, especially in a design shop or a facilitator, is like, don't let perfect get in the way of the progress, you immediately snap out and kind of like zoom out a little bit and go, oh, okay, like, am I spending too much time polishing this part here when there's other things that need to be addressed that are probably going to give, like, is what I'm doing right here actually going to give me the value that I'm spending on it versus moving on to these other pieces that need to also be worked on simultaneously.
Yeah, and like I know we talked about Gary Vee last episode.
We always talk about Gary Vee. We love Gary Vee.
We do love Gary Vee. But like, there's a perfect example.
Oh,
he just drew his NFTs. Like,
oh yes,
I'm not going to knock his artwork. I like it. It's cool. But like, a lot of that would have stopped a lot of people. But he's just like, I'm gonna draw these things, and they're cool. And now they're kind of going to the next stage for their next release. They've kind of added more detail.
Yeah, it's really smart the way he did that, and it's smart, but it's also, that's exactly what that's the muscle he's been flexing for so long and talking about too a lot, is just getting stuff out there and building an audience. So when you do get something out there, you've got an audience to share with, and yeah, it's not really, because art's or the I guess the detailing or the finished aspect of design is important, but it's not really the be all and end all, is it? It's really the process that goes into something and bringing people along on the journey, and also the meaning that it has behind it, more so than the visual itself. But I love visuals, and I've definitely, like I said before, it's like I've had many. I think I've flexed a lot of actually letting perfect, like when I'm doing lettering or something like that, and I taught myself drawing, I'd always be sort of like kind of like obsessing over details and things like that, and you kind of get in that sort of headspace. But then you learn that that's not everything. There's so much more to, it's not everyone's even noticing a lot of this stuff too, which is a bit of a mind shift when you start to realize how much it's energy and time you invest into something that's not really getting you the best results.
And you're kind of keeping it in your own head. Like, you're not allowing for any other input or feedback to come in. So it's kind of, you can kind of get past the point where something was potentially a good idea, and then you start to form rigidity around these concepts or ideas, and then it kind of, it doesn't allow for emergence. So, and when you think of like painting, an artist painting, it's like, there is a point where you can overdo it. I think there's a real art to knowing when to put down the paintbrush, because if you continue and you keep going without giving time for things to rest and to stand back and to look at something with fresh eyes, you can really kind of but add too many things, add too much, and take away the simplicity or the beauty of the idea or that, design.
And when you've gone too much, it's over. Like it's very hard to subtract, like to get it back to that point. It's sort of like it's gone. That's a really interesting point for sure. And
remember when we used to do like design proposals and like presentations and stuff like that, and we used to really like design them, like really would put so much effort. Like we still put effort into our proposals and we put a lot of thought into it, but it's different now. Like we would really kind of design things and everything would be very polished and whatever. And now we just go rapid, like do a sketch, draft some process or ideas out on the page, take a snapshot, chuck it in the proposal, and maybe we scribe it now a little bit and it's a bit more sketchy or drafty. And that kind of gives people more input, like, because it doesn't seem to them like you've already finished something.
Well, that's a critical point. Well, there's 2 points I'm thinking of there, but one is that when something does look polished, you can't get feedback. It's very hard to give feedback on it because it's done. Like you're saying, it's like hard to invite. It doesn't look inviting to critique or to give feedback into, like, because it sort of looks already done. And the second point is like it's built for purpose too. It's like, because some things do need to be polished, you know, especially in design. Well, you know, like an aeroplane's design has to be very, you know, perfect to a degree, you know, but it's,
but it didn't start like that.
Of course it didn't start like that.
It starts with a model, like an idea, and then they start with models, and then they go from models to, you know, fleshing out ideas and engineering and all that. So it doesn't, that aeroplane is the perfection. That is the end result.
Yes.
But it starts with a pencil.
Of course.
Or even an idea and then a pencil.
Yeah. I'm just saying that the form that, like if you go too far, it's like that, like it's like the form that you're using or the level of detail that you're going to needs to fit for the purpose. And like you're saying, like further down the along the design process, it's going to become more refined and more, and even though another thing that I've been I guess realizing is that perfection doesn't really exist either. It's like, well, everything's perfect the way it is all the time anyway, but it's like this sort of benchmark or this guide, but it's more about like meeting its function and doing its job more so than it being perfect, because perfect's a little bit of this thing that's like hard to grasp.
Yeah, and you can't get that without feedback. Like that's just not how the universe works. It's not how nature works. Like animals, plants, they are iterating based on what feedback they're getting from the environment. So it's like, do you keep, you know, did a snail just come because it come out into the world because it was someone's idea, or, you know, for how many ever thousands of years, and then all of a sudden it's just this perfect snail? Or did it start off as something like a single cell organism and start to grow and evolve and adapt and change to the environment that it was in? Or, you know, how did that come to be?
Yeah, well, there's a few theories on that though, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, and I don't know. We don't have to get into that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I guess back to
maybe not the right analogy, but you know what I mean. It's like,
well, it just depends on the definition of perfect too, because that's what I'm kind of saying is like perfect's like first of all, perfect's a word as well, right? It's like, does nature think of perfection? Nature just is perfect, you know, or it is it, and it is what it is, which is, you know, it is a beautiful thing. But we have this sort of thing where we have this idea of what something perfect can be, and that's you know, it can be quite like also in culture, you know, just thinking of you know, not putting yourself out there as well. It's like sort of like, I don't know, there's like this like I guess perception that you well, it could be a perception, but it's like of you being good at something, and like when you're putting yourself out there, like it's almost like you're having to let go of like being perfect. You know, you're just like, we're not the best podcasters in the world, but we're going to do it anyway, you know, and we're going to work towards something rather than waiting to be good at something before we you know, just dive in and get good at it by putting ourselves out there.
Yeah, I think that's like, especially in Australia, you know, it's really hard to put yourself out there because there is this kind of culture here, and I'm not sure how many people are aware of it, but in Australia there is this thing called like tall poppy syndrome. So if you kind of put your head out, and I don't know if that comes from like penal colony like days or whatever it was, but if you step up or you put your head out there, people tend to kind of like chop you down. It's just a cultural thing. Like I didn't really experience that in the States, like when I was there. But I think Australia definitely has that kind of culture.
It does, and it kind of sucks in a way because, you know, like especially when you're growing up, like, well, for me anyway, like I did have fear of, I guess not. There was fear obviously of putting myself out there, but as well as this kind of need or like want of a cultural community that is supportive. Because that's like one of the hardest things is like getting through the mental, I guess, barriers of, like putting, because that's all it is like a mental barrier of like why you can't just be totally open and free all the time because you're like worried about what other people think of you or how you're going to be perceived or what your parents are going to think or your family, all this bullshit. It's like, you know, if none of that existed, you'd just be like, phew, you know, just going for it all the time with way less tension and friction in your mindset and in your emotion.
And I think there is like this kind of feeling or idea rather, like that you have to be perfect. Like social media is a really big promoter of that. Like you look at people's really nicely curated social media profiles and they're like really projecting these like perfect lifestyles, and not saying that everyone's intentionally doing that, but you're not really posting.
It's curated anyway,
it's
like
curated,
to whatever degree.
Curated.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives you a bit of a warped perception of reality as well, I think.
It definitely does. Like even, some of these social media platforms these days have been in trouble for kind of inciting it almost, because they know that, especially teenagers and stuff these days, like they're so obsessed with, or some of them are anyways, like with their image because of social media, because it is so much like image based and people are constantly comparing themselves to other people, and it can really lead to a pretty miserable existence if you're constantly living through comparison, staring at someone else's life that's a curated version of the reality anyway, and you're missing out on just being, who you are and following your own path.
That's it.
And not worrying about all this other stuff. But it's so difficult, like there's just so much to, compare yourself to, as well. It's like it's very easy to go, oh shit, like I'm this age, or I'm this, or my bank account's like this, or I'm not tall, or whatever, like short. It's just like you can constantly do it and find reasons not to do things. It's so easy to find excuses to not do something, not be, go get fit, or not, I don't know, find love or whatever it is. It's like you can always, all that's possible. But when you start to just like, look around at external sources and hope that one day the stars will align and perfection will emerge and it will be the perfect day for something to happen for you, it's not really gonna. It's it's a bit of a fantasy, that, and a bit of a hard reality too.
No, is that true?
Yeah, that's what I'm realizing. And I think that goes back to it too. It's like this muscle this muscle memory of like constantly, like not just waiting around. You got to actually go out. Whatever you want in your life, that you're waiting for the perfect moment for it to happen for you. It's not just going to happen for you. You've got to work. You got to put something in place. You got to start the momentum to get yourself there, or at least create the energy to draw opportunities to you. And then you're in a good place, rather than, just hoping that it's going to be better someday or perfect one day.
Yeah, and like sticking with it with consistency, isn't it? Because that's something that we haven't really done with the podcast. I mean, we do that with our business. We've done that with our practice and our methodology and our design work and our client relationships and the things that we do outside of the studio, like our sporting interests and fitness and things like that, music. But like, yeah, if you aren't consistently showing up and committed to showing up, even as things aren't perfect, then they're never going to get a chance to get perfect. Well,
that's it. It's like in the face of it not being perfect, that's the reason why you should be moving towards whatever you want to, knowing where you're going, because it's never going to happen any other way. And that's actually part of the process, is like being uncomfortable, but also the, what do they say? Like when we're doing up creation, Gayla was saying it's like transformation happens through struggle or something. It was, I don't think she used the word struggle, but it was like, that's how it happens. It's like you need to actually go, and that's why we love the lob. So obviously it's like that adversity of actually going, oh, I've got to get through this.
Get out of my shell.
And get out of my shell. You're not going to become a black belt overnight by just thinking about it. Or maybe you could if you're really good at manifesting.
Well, I don't know about you, but have you started doing like shrimp? Have you started shrimping at night yet in your bed when you turn over?
Oh, I went through that phase. I haven't shrimped in my bed lately, but I was definitely
because I've been doing
waking up in some crazy positions, dreaming about jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but I've noticed that. Like if I'm turning in my bed, Like someone mentioned this to me and I'm like, nah, that's not going to happen.
Just hit button.
And then I did it and then, I'm like,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, oh, wow, I actually did that.
Well, that's it. That's part of the part of the progression. And maybe there's just one last little bit, and it's just going back to, I think it's what we've already been talking to, but just fleshing out a little bit more is the fear aspect of it. You know, it's like, why would you not just go out and just do all the shit you want to do with your life? Why not?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Well, I know you know. Well, I'm trying to get an answer from you.
Why wouldn't you go? Okay.
Like in relation to fear, like why are we not just going out and doing everything? Why is a fear this so present in stopping us doing
I don't know.
what we want to do with our lives?
I think there's a bit of programming there. I think, you know, people have their own degrees of trauma and personal stuff that they need to work through. Like I definitely find it difficult. I find it, you know, challenging, the idea of actually getting in a position where you are successful in a way. Like, and I don't know what successful means, but there's this whole thing around success. You know, it's like this big deal around in our society and what that means. And you know, it definitely doesn't have there's not one thing about what that means. But there is this perception that it's around wealth and you know, celebrity and you know,
or clothing,
clothing, honestly, yeah, like, but like look at us, like we don't really give a shit about that stuff. So like, even if we were successful, we probably wouldn't be successful. Do you know what I mean? Because we wouldn't really live like that. I don't think too much would change.
Yeah, well, one thing that my coach helped me last week on this was like that. Success is more a feeling than because you can feel successful. Like, do you feel successful right now? You know, it's like, it's a good time, you know, like, yeah, sure, I'm feeling good. But like tomorrow, you know, you might have a bit of a shitter and it like, you know, don't feel so good. And it's like, you might have all the money in the bank account, but you might not feel successful then. All the money in the world in your bank account, sorry. You know, it's not really like, it's like this kind of fake illusionary thing of like what this like one thing is, when it's really a feeling that you are experiencing for yourself. And it's sort of like a choice to make. Like and to know, like, obviously you're not going to feel 100% all the time. Like there's ups and downs on these journeys, but it's like knowing that it's all, none of this is really like a thing. It's a bit of an illusion.
No, for me, that's not like, that success is not my success at all. Like, I just want to be having fun and doing really good work and be really healthy and fit. And yeah, be challenged in the work that I'm doing. I like complexity. And so I guess, like, you know, if we're getting the opportunity to do the work that we love, because we are good at, we've invested in ourselves and the skill set to do the work that we love and live the lifestyles that we like to live, which are simple. You know, we love nature and you know, all the good stuff, like good food and
friends,
you know, good company and music, and we don't live, we're not really into like flashy things. Just to be good, I think, be good people and to continue to invest in ourselves and grow. And just keep learning and to be including other people in what we do learn and growing our community and investing in our community.
Yeah, and learning such a huge part of that. It's like curiosity and learning, like they're the main drivers in a way of like a lot of life. You know, if you're not curious or you're not learning, you kind of feel a bit stagnant and stale. But when you've got that, you know, you've got something, you're challenged, you're interested, you're excited because there's something like, you're curious about something. It's like, how does this thing work? How does this thing come together? And then you come to some new realization and then you're like, that's when you feel great. You know, you're like, it's riveting when you like doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're actually growing.
Well, your brain keeps growing too, doesn't it? Like look
It
at
does.
like it keeps regenerating because
Yes.
you're constantly creating more neural pathways because you're learning, and like you're keeping the elasticity in your brain, and like if you look at Matt and Gail, like they are amazing, you know, like so inspiring. They're in their 80s, and they're just so
Youthful.
I don't even
like
youthful,
sparkly.
so switched on.
Yeah.
And they're amazing. So, you know, I definitely aspire to be there if I ever make it to my 80s.
Yeah, who knows, eh?
Who knows, yeah.
One day at a time, but yeah, there's so much to learn, and so much to learn as, you know, as a human being, and as a community, as a group, as a business. You know, it's really endless. So that should do it for today or tonight. Eh? What do you think?
Yeah, we got to go and pack.
Gotta go pack. Yes, we're out of the studio for the rest of the week, but we've ticked the podcast box, which is great, and I hope everyone's been loving it. You know, we've like we've said, we're going to be doing these once a week, or at least releasing them once a week. You can find us on TikTok for all the TikTokers out there. We're still trying to get into it, but that's where you find a lot of our clips, little bite-sized chunks, you know, little audio clip, video clips, of the best bits of each episode. You can also find us on Instagram, at Design on Purpose, and as always on LinkedIn, WordPlay Studio, and our website, www.wordplaystudio.com.
What about the YouTube?
Oh, and of course, YouTube, yes. Like and subscribe. That's what they say, right?
Yeah.
Make sure you like and
yeah,
subscribe.
And if you guys could like share this, you know, if you've enjoyed this podcast and you've been enjoying it so far, give it a share, or like, you know, screenshot the play.
Yeah, or send it
like on Spotify and just like upload it to the story or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And
that'd be awesome.
And if any of the content that we've spoken about, you know, you think a certain friend or somebody may find it valuable, you know, just send it through to them, because we would love to, just hear what everyone's thinking, and hope that it's delivering some value to everybody. And you can leave comments in the YouTube and on the social platforms too. We will be there to reply. We'll be waiting. So yeah, stay tuned for another episode, and we'll be back next week with another topic that we haven't yet decided on what it is yet. So stay tuned.